I grew up about 45 miles west of here, as you know, town of Farmington, small rural town, 3 brothers and a little sister. I got to know my town and my community by delivering newspapers to them as a child, and been serving hamburger meatloaf and mac and cheese to them as a teenager at the Shiretown restaurant. And the people in my town didn't tolerate bullies very well. And they expected all of us to not just walk the walk, not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. That's why when I got to be your district attorney here in Oxford County, I took on tough cases of domestic violence myself, and I won. I took on bail reform and sentencing reform to protect the rights of victims and the rights of those accused of crime, and I won those reforms. And when I learned that the voice of women was not being heard in the Maine legislature, when we were losing legislation on sexual assault, domestic violence, displaced homemakers. You taping? Oh my God.
Yes, I'm taping.
I co-founded the Maine Women's Lobby, which Betsy Sweetden works for. I co-founded the Maine Women's Lobby, which is now the longest existing women's lobby group in the country, and I'm proud of that. When I got to be your Attorney General a few years ago, I took on the biggest bully the state of Maine has ever known, and I won my battles with him. The first thing he wanted to do was to take away health care from thousands of children, low-income children in Maine, and I said, you can't do that. He said, I can, and he filed a lawsuit. I fought back, and I won, keeping those kids on health care in Maine. When he said, I can have private meetings on my own time, my own place, I said, no, you can't. I sued him and I won. We're in constant battles. You read some of them in the newspaper. You wouldn't believe the rest that goes on. It's frightening to open the mail in the morning sometimes. But as your governor, I will continue to fight the good fight against the Trump administration on natural resources protection, against the Republicans in the legislature when they try to roll back our health care rules and laws. And as many of you know, my husband died a couple years ago. The last year of his life was really painful, and it brought my family together. I'd married a widower with 5 daughters when I was district attorney. Probably the least rational thing a person ever did, but hey, it worked out. The last year of his life was an eye-opener for me, dealing with the healthcare system in Maine. But it was nothing different than what thousands of Mainers and Maine families go through every year in this state, every day in this state. And I got to know so many healthcare workers, CNAs, and therapists and nurses, and so many people in these institutions, these nursing homes and rehab centers. Good, hardworking people. And it's those people I think of every morning when I get up and go to the office to protect the constitutional rights of the people of Maine. As your governor, I will take on the special interests as I have as your Attorney General, taking on the big corporations, pharmaceutical companies, Volkswagen of America, Standard & Poor's and Moody's on Wall Street, bringing them to bear, changing behavior, bringing money back to the state of Maine, using those funds to help people fight foreclosure in their homes, using those funds to buy Narcan after our governor last year said, oh, Narcan doesn't save lives, it just postpones death. I thought that was about the most callous thing a public official could ever say, and that most callous thing I've ever heard in this state. Yes.
30 seconds.
So I bought a room full of Narcan with the pharmaceutical settlements, and as of 2 days ago, we have saved 233 lives with that Narcan, bringing it to 55 different police departments. 233 lives and 1 3-year-old yellow lab over in Lyman. But I want to be your governor because I believe the best chapter in our state's history has not yet been written. I want to be there to write it with you, to carry the banner of the Democratic Party, take back the Blaine House, and I'm going to win. Thank you.
Next up is he's a former commander in the Coast Guard. Is that
Eisenhart.
He's way down Eisenhart. Eisenhart. Patrick Eisenhart. You're smart. Use my license still. And surprising when I know and he goes, at any rate, I'm the father of 3 children, all have been raised in public school system, all 3 are college graduates. 9 grandchildren, last count, 1 great-grandchild. I'm a former jump master, 101st Airborne, and I spent 25 years in the United States Coast Guard, both at active duty and reserve duty. In addition to that, I served 20 years in the CEO of the Countywide Healthcare Corporation. And what inspired me to run was reading in the newspaper about the Canadian and Kentucky spraying, mismanagement of funds. The latest thing was 8,000 people that didn't get reviewed because of the all people dying and so forth from being abused. I support expanded Medicaid. I support universal health care. I support my friends in Maine all care. But the question I think that we're all going to get stuck with, we've got to be prepared to deal with it, is how are you going to pay for it? Because they want to brand us a bunch of spendthrift, liberals. My health care plan, I hope, will be a start. And if I don't get elected, I hope that the worthy candidates that we have that running with me or against me, however we can put that, will think about it. My plan is to develop small clinics, put on RFPs to small clinics. Right now, we need to use better utilization of our resources. We have to stop institutionalizing people in nursing homes, hospitals, and all the rest of it when they don't need to be there. It makes no sense. If an elderly person is at home malnourished because she was making the choice between medicine or fuel or whatever, she develops pneumonia and then winds up in the hospital. My plan would be clinics that we dot across the state, put out our forms, existing clinics, and we would send home health aid nurses to check in on different people. They would work under the supervision of their doctor. It would also be a base of operation for mental health and for opioid drug treatment. How would we pay for that? Okay. Well, first of all, in addition to that, this young lady here, okay, I don't mean to single you out, but 85% of the health care in this country is direct health care, primary health care. And that means most of you depend on the hospital and so forth, but most of us, when we need health care, is to go down and see our doctor, give us a shot or EKG or whatever, monitors our diabetes and all that. That's where most of the health care comes from. How we would pay for that would be, I would ask her to pay X amount of dollars, maybe $50 a month, the same way she would pay for her health, her cell phone bill, the same way she would pay for her cable bill, and all the rest. That would eliminate the insurance companies between Medicare, Medicaid, membership fees, and if those clinics were not-for-profit, they could also be funded with charitable dollars. No more need for direct primary care health care treatment. No more co-pays. Reduce paperwork billing to the insurance companies. No more deductibles. Okay, you would need catastrophic health insurance, but all the rest of that health care that you need, you wouldn't have to pay more than that $50 a month membership fee. Or if you were on, say, Medicare, it doesn't cover everything, so maybe you would pay a $30 fee, something like that. My website is Eisenhart for government.org, and on there it spells out my health care plan. Okay? It's basically membership fees, Medicare, Medicaid, and we don't. And the other thing is, the beauty of this is when the Republicans ask us how we're going to pay for it, we're going to tell them that our intent is to reduce the cost of institutional care. The savings from that could be put into small clinics. No more CEO premium for the insurance company, no more pay for him, no more hospital administrators fee, and no more pay for that beautiful landscaping out here in front of our hospital and these Cosmo halls that we have to spend all of our money on. We have to become conservative, okay, and keep them at their own game. Thank you very much.
I have some notes, but I'm gonna focus more on. I was just talking to my dinner mate. And I really want to focus more tonight, my conversation, about the values that I share with other Democrats here in the Maine Democratic Party. I spoke in Bangor to the Penobscot Democrats yesterday, and I spoke to folks before and after, chatted with a few folks here. That's the common thing, the theme I'm hearing is more, not so far right now, it's not just the platform, this idea, that idea. Right now, with 8 or so months to go, and 8 of us or so in the race, you know, people want to know, what are your values? Why are you doing this? Especially for someone like me that isn't well known up in this area. So my values come from the paper mill towns of Maine. My father was born in Rumford in 1928. His parents came to Rumford in 1919 from Prince Edward Island. And his mom became a single mom and raised 4 kids in Rumford. Dad went off, joined the Army, and went to UMaine on the GI Bill, and graduated from UMaine, where he had met my mother. She's from East Millinocket, another mill town that's both towns of which have been heavily affected over the last generation or so. And I'll get back to a little bit about that East Millinocket situation in a minute. So really what's driving me, the values are that we're a hard-working state. We're people that believe in hard work. We believe in supporting one another. And we've seen over the last 7 years, the leader of our state does not seem to share that value, that we all support one another. His work is driven principally on ideology, and I know that from having served in the state Senate. I was chair of the Environment Committee. I served on the Agriculture, Conservation, Forestry Committee, and we tried to work things out, and often did work things out in committee. Then we come up against the veto pen. John Madigan was talking about this earlier. John Patrick can attest to this, because I served with John. Learned a lot from you, by the way, John. Thank you. About this process. I mean, when you're new to that, there's a lot to learn. So he would just seem to veto things that didn't really reflect the values of Maine voters. One of the key reasons I'm in this race, one Sunday morning I woke up, and in the paper was the description, explanation really, of what had happened to the money that was supposed to go to the mill in East Millinocket. Around $60 million in New Market's tax credit. These greedy corporate people came in to that town and took that money and did not invest it in the equipment. There was $16 million that was allocated, as I recall, to be invested in the equipment of the mill to modernize it. They didn't do that. They formed another corporation and gave the money to that corporation and did a one-day loan kind of thing. I don't remember all the specifics, but I do remember how I felt about it, because that mill then, 3 years later, closed, and my cousins were working in that mill, and they're no longer working. My great-grandfather came to that town in 1907 to help build that mill, and he worked there for 53 years until he retired at the age of 75. Had 10 kids, one of which was my grandmother, who moved there when she was 3. My mother was born in that town. I don't even know how many cousins worked in that mill. So to get up one morning and realize that corporate crooks came into Maine and basically were the death knell, nail in the coffin of that community, because that community has been devastated. I mean, Penobscot River Valley has 5 mills that have closed. Madison's closed. A lot of it, to me, comes down to greed. I'm a small business owner. I didn't even mention that, because you can make it in business without being greedy. That's what I've done. I started my business in 1996. I left a good job at Central Maine Power Company because I wanted to work for myself and do what I loved, which is I was a forester, got my degree in forestry from UMaine where my parents went, and then did that for a number of years, including out of Millinocket for Great Northern Paper, and then St. Regis. So I've worked all across the state for the last 40 years. I'm a wetland scientist and forester. I hired people in my business that I ran for 21 years. I grew it up to an 8-person business of scientists, bachelor's and master's level scientists working all across Maine and outside of Maine, actually. Hired people, talk about young people and brain drain. I've brought people into Maine from outside Maine to work here. So I kind of rambled a little bit more than I expected, and probably more than my assistant would have liked, because we worked hard on the speech, but because it's really about values. It is. You want someone with a positive vision of leadership to lead all of us as a community of Mainers together in a common direction that isn't about beating each other up. And if I'm governor of the Maine, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to lead the legislature in a forward-looking direction. We have University of Maine, we have forest bioproducts, we have laminated timbers, we have all kinds of, I have great ideas out there that I'm going to elaborate more as time goes forward, but I really want people to take away that this is about values and working together as a community, as a state. Thank you.
Thanks for inviting us all and spending your lovely summer evening and afternoon with us. I am Betsy Sweet, and I love when people call me a lobbyist because that's what you have to file in the paper, right? But I've been an advocate for many years with many of the people in this room, and so I'm so glad John Patrick and Charlotte Warren and Janet Mills and many people being an advocate for real people, Mainers whose voices haven't come to the table. I'm running for governor as a clean elections candidate because I believe that in order for us to make progress on the issues that I care about and that you care about and that with our values we care about, we cannot do that unless we fundamentally change the system. People that I talk to, your friends, our neighbors, people know that the system is broken. Our system is broken. We feel it. We don't have to talk about it, we don't have to analyze it. We just feel like it's broken. It's not meeting our needs. People say, I want to know that my daily life matters, and I want to know that my voice is heard. And most people don't believe that government does either one of those things. And that's why I think last time they wanted to kick the tables over and say, this system's broken. We have to listen to that. We have an opportunity to listen to that. And that's what I've done my whole life. As an advocate, as lobbyists, right, what do you think of? Money falling out of your pocket, cigar, doing back rooms? I wasn't that. I haven't done that. I've advocated for women, for children, for education. When I talked to workers who couldn't take care of their families, because when someone was sick, because they were going to lose their job, I worked with a lot of people to come together to write the first Family Medical Leave Act in the country, here in Maine, that became the model for the nation. Because people shouldn't have to choose between caring for their job, right? Caring for their loved ones and doing their job. But I also in 1992 did the research that led us to write the first clean elections law in the country. Because we aren't going to make progress on the things that we all care about. Health care, keeping our environment clean, unnecessary gun violence, the things that we are trying to do to make a better life for ourselves, jobs that start from the bottom up, economy that actually pays attention to what's happening in Bethel, Maine, and Woodstock, Maine, and Portland, Maine, and not big manufacturers that we think we're going to get back to come to this. We spend thousands of dollars in Maine, hundreds of thousands of dollars to bring manufacturing companies here. They're not coming. We need to grow an economy from where we are. But none of that happens, and that's a path forward for us. But none of that happens unless we take the first step. And that first step is getting money out of politics. And that's going to take a lot of courage on all of our parts. Last November, how many of you worked on one of the referendums? Healthcare, ranked choice voting, right? Those referendums. And what happened? Minimum wage? So people could have a real wage. What happened when they got to the legislature? Right? They got overturned. They got tweaked with. Why? Because people with a lot of money came in and said, we don't want these. We don't like what the people said. That's why we went to referendum in the first place. And then we say to people, why don't you vote? Why don't you vote? Oh, we don't vote because when it doesn't matter. So we have a historic opportunity. People know it's broken. We have a way to fix it here in Maine. And one of the ways is clean elections. And clean elections means getting money, literally getting money out of politics. It's not that you won't take money, it's that you can't take money from anybody except real Maine voters who want their lives to matter. And to be successful, we have to talk to at least 16,000 Maine voters one-on-one to say, what's going on in your life? What are your hopes? What are your dreams? As a mom of 3 children, and as an advocate, and as someone who owns a business, I want to hear the reality of people's lives, because I know it often matches my reality, which is living paycheck to paycheck and trying to make sure that I can pay tuition, pay my property taxes, and keep a job. I had to start 2 businesses so that I could raise my kids. Right? That's the reality we have. We have the opportunity to be the party. So we can't be the party of caution, where we listen to a politician, or we call a pollster or somebody in D.C., and we say, what do people want to hear? Okay, let's say that. We have an opportunity in this moment in history to be the party of courage and to not be the party of funders, but be the party of the people. That's who we are as Democrats, and that's what we can do, and that's how we're going to win in November. And whichever one of us who wins in June, we're going to all come together, but we are going to make sure that people know that their reality matters, that we care, and that we're going to move forward together with Maine values, hard work, and getting it done. That's why I'm running, and I'd love to have you running. Thank you so much.
It's an honor to be here. I want to thank the kitchen staff for a phenomenal meal. Oxford County Democrats having us here, and whenever we've been coming up to events in Oxford County, I've asked Andrea Quaid to come with me. She's a good friend of mine, and I said, Andrea, I need to meet people in Oxford County. You've got to come and sit there and introduce me to everyone you can. And I know many of you know Andrea. She was a field rep district rep for Congressman Mishu for years, and is a good friend. So thanks for being here. I appreciate it. And the Cote family, we're a little understaffed today. Audrey sprained her ankle, soccer game. Anna had braces put in yesterday, and AJ had a football game. So, but Mia is here, our 10-year-old, fresh off a birthday 3 days ago. And Big Mike's fighting off a cold, but he wanted to come because we had movies showing in the car. So, and he's about ready to go to bed too. So, anyway, thanks for having me. I'll tell you really quick about myself, why I'm running, and then hopefully, if we don't get cut off too soon, I wanted to have a quick conversation of where I think Maine ought to be 10 years from now, because I think so often, and we're all saying this, everybody that's been up here has been talking about the tweets, the instant news, the sadness we're seeing every day in the news, whether it's from our governor or from our president. These are really terrible times in our country. So I want to have a quick conversation of where we could be 10 years from now, which I think is important because we're too reactive right now. I was born and raised in Sanford. I come from a big family. My Pepe had 16 brothers and sisters. My Meme had 11. So I'm related to half of York County. And found out from Tim Carter tonight that I have connections over in Bethel too. My stepfather's from Bethel and has known Tim for years. My wife and I have 5 young kids. My wife is a first-generation American. She's from Colombia. And we lived in Sanford, and we're raising our kids there now. I have a background in politics and public service, in business, in law, and in the military. I've served in everything from local school boards to statewide boards, such as Maine Veterans Housing Coalition, Mid-Coast Regional Redevelopment Authority, overseeing Brunswick Landing. I've worked in the business and the legal side, mostly in renewable energy. That's what most of my background is in. I've worked in wind and solar and lots of other demand response technologies, smart grid technologies, that sort of thing. I was recognized by President Obama as a champion of change for my work in renewable energy. I was one of 10 veterans that he recognized nationally for that, and was invited down to the White House, but couldn't go. I was on a deployment at the time, and I'm pretty sure the invitation doesn't extend to the new president. And even if it did, I don't think I want to go. But on the military side, I've had 3 combat tours. I've been a member of the Maine National Guard for over 20 years. I've served in Bosnia, I've served in Iraq, and I've served in Afghanistan. After I got back from Afghanistan, soon after that, Governor LePage was reelected. And I had several folks, including Andrea and some others, talk to me about considering running for governor. My wife and I spent a lot of time talking about this, and of course, when this conversation first starts, you think of all the other people that might run, and you can drive yourself crazy doing that. And I decided to put that to the side because you can't control the things you can't control. But what my wife and I talked about mostly, 7:05. Mikey set my alarm clock to 7:05. It goes off. I told we started talking about how tough it is here to raise kids in Maine. We started talking about the fact that our schools aren't funded. We have health insurance problem, an opioid crisis that's out of hand. We're not doing what we need to do to grow our economies, particularly in our rural areas and our mill towns. And I believe that with the right focus and right leadership as governor, there's no reason why we can't have the best public schools in the country right here in Maine. We can provide health insurance for everybody. We can put this opioid crisis in the rearview mirror. We can grow our economy. And yes, focusing on renewable energy is a great way to do that. It is a great way to do that. And we've got to start creating opportunity in the rural areas, in the mill towns. In our hometown of Sanford, we have over 70% of our kids on free and reduced lunch. And it becomes from the fact that we're not growing our economies in those areas. So we said, you know what, we're going to do it. We're going to go to every place across the state where we can and talk to people. I would love to have your assistance in this race. I'd love to have you on board. At a minimum, I'll end with this. Get involved in the campaign. Whether it's getting Bruce Poliquin out of Congress or getting one of us elected in 18. Because we got to win.